accepting of all. Oh, but you're telling me we have to change it?
Yeah.
That's the council.
Yeah, that would be my, like,
We would- But, you know, there'll be new.
I think we're ready. Good morning and welcome to the Space Coast TPO, TAC, and CAC meeting for May. I'll call this meeting to order, and please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first up is public comment. Do we have any public comment this morning? Is that a no? No public comment. Third on the agenda is the Executive Director's Report. And that's you, Georgiana. Good morning, Georgiana.
Good morning. Welcome, everyone. It's good to see all of your faces this morning. In your package is the draft Governing Board meeting minutes of March the 9th. And the Governing Board approved all of the action items, including the committee appointments. They also received presentations on FDOT's A1A strategic plan, as well as the I-95 master plan. We also discussed the DOT's draft SIS cost feasible plan, and also the letter from the TPO that was sent to FDOT's central office outlining our concerns related to the lack of funding for some of our high priority projects and how that would really inhibit our ability to include those projects into our long-range plan development. So it generated some very good conversation. Also, a few items of note regarding the 2023 legislative session. This is officially the last week of session, I believe. A budget was passed with $100 million for the Indian River Lagoon cleanup for specific projects. And this continues the ongoing efforts from Senate Bill 712, which was passed in 2020. So that's really good news for the lagoon. Also, Senate Bill 1250 and House Bill 1305. These are the DOT's bills from the transportation side. They were brought into alignment, and one of the items in that bill provides that automated license plate recognition systems may not be used to issue a notice of violation for a traffic infraction citation. So that was something that was being discussed this legislative session. House Bill 657 allows school districts the option to install automatic speed enforcement equipment in designated school zones. And Senate Bill 766 permits the photographic enforcement of vehicles that pass stopped school buses. And both bills have passed both the House and the Senate and are awaiting presentation to the governor. And I know that this has been a big problem in Brevard County. Karen, I think I've heard quite a few people discussing that this is very concerning for the children here in Brevard County. So I think that's really good news. There's also land use and development regulation bills, House Bill 439 and Senate Bill 1604. Revise guidance for amending comprehensive plans and require local governments adopt land development regulations that promote urban infill. And a late amendment included any development approved for a future land use amendment or rezoning that has 25% affordable housing units may expand onto adjacent property regardless of the land use designation of the property. So this is something that has been talked about a lot this session as well. And then lastly, I want to bring to your attention Senate Bill 106, which expands the Sun Trail network. And it doubles its funding to $50 million annually, which is really good news. It was signed into law by the governor. And of course, that includes, it's Florida Greenways and Trails System Priority Network. Those are the projects that includes. So that's going to really go a long way for closing in the gaps and those statewide paved trail system, the Coast to Coast Trail, the East Coast Greenway, and the River to Sea Loop Trail. Also, the MPOAC will be providing a summary of all of these transportation-related bills after the session ends. And so we will be providing you that as soon as we can. Also, the Central Florida MPO Alliance met in April, and on page 4 of your package are some highlights and presentation links for your reference. Also, the MPOAC, which is the statewide meeting of the 27 MPOs, met on April the 27th. We've had a busy April. Secretary Perdue was in attendance, and he spoke to the staff directors and the governing board members. And he reiterated partnerships and that communities throughout the state are unique and have varied needs and priorities. And, you know, he said that DOT remains committed to achieving the local visions for transportation. He also said that DOT remains attuned to cutting-edge ideas for enhancing mobility to accommodate our consistent and rapid growth. You know, planning for infrastructure, typically we use a 3% growth rate when you plan for long-term projects, which is very aggressive. But, you know, some areas of Florida are seeing a 20 to 30% growth yearly. And so we have some challenges, and we have some very unique needs here in Florida. Safety will continue to be a top focus of the department, and he also mentioned some of those FHWA countermeasures, roundabouts, and diverging diamonds, and how we should all be looking at that infrastructure very closely if we really want to get serious about safety. So a very good conversation. We always enjoy listening to Secretary Perdue. And then finally, at the MPOAC freight meeting, we submitted 3 projects to the statewide freight list, both segments of the widening of State Road 528, of course, the Ellis Road widening project, and we submitted State Road 524 from Friday Road to Industry, which we feel that corridor has become a major freight corridor with the rapid growth along that corridor. There is not dedicated money for freight projects, unfortunately, out of central office, but freight continues to be a focus in the infrastructure bill. So getting it on those statewide priority lists is going to be very critical to keep it at the forefront of the conversations. You know, we try to include our priorities in every list that it qualifies for, and just always want it to be part of the conversation, and that's important for being competitive in those discussions. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Georgiana. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, Adam?
Do we have any statistics on what's happening with freight, percentage-wise, over the course of the last 10 years?
I don't, I'm sure we do. That's something that we could potentially get. You mean as far as,
Pull up, thanks.
okay.
Adam Kohler, District 1.
Thank you. Any other questions for Georgiana? Okay, next on the agenda is the consent agenda, and just as a reminder, we passed the entire agenda in one motion. There's 4 items today. The first is the Technical and Citizen Advisory Committee meeting minutes from March 6, 2023. Next is Work Order 23-05K, the 2022 State of the System Report. C is Resolution 23-16, Acceptance of FDOT Intermodal Grant and Work Order 23-06H, Intermodal Station Feasibility Study. And D is Work Order 23-07H, 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan. Do I have a motion from the TAC? Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you, Devin. Okay, we'll send it over to you, sir.
Okay, and from the CAC, do we have a motion, please? Motion from Adam Kohler, second from Arlen. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed?
And from the TAC, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay. Consent agenda passes. Next is the action item section of the agenda, and we have one action item today. It's Resolution 23-18, the 2045 Long Range Transportation Plan Amendment Number 4.
Good morning, Debbie Flynn, Space Coast TPO, Transportation Planner. There are occasionally times when Space Coast TPO may find it necessary to amend the long-range transportation plan outside the 5-year update cycle. Today, the Space Coast TPO is requesting approval to add one project to the long-range transportation plan. Per the request of the City of Palm Bay, if potential funding for design and construction becomes available, St. John's Heritage Parkway Winding Project has been added to Table 11.8 grant-funded projects of the Long Range Transportation Plan, with an estimated cost of $3.3 million for design and $30 million for construction. Space Coast TPO seeks to amend the 2045 Long Range Transportation Plan by Resolution Number 2318. 2045 Long Range Transportation Plan Amendment Number 4, in order to comply with the planning consistency requirements. An amendment requires public review and comment in accordance with the public involvement process for the Long Range Transportation Plan amendments. Such notice was conducted with the posting of the Space Coast TPO May 11th, 2023 meeting notice and included with the meeting agenda posted on the Space Coast TPO's website on May 1st, 2023. Space Coast TPO is requesting your approval of Resolution Number 2318, 2045 Long Range Transportation Plan Amendment Number 4. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Debbie. Discussion from the TAC? Any discussion?
From the CAC, any discussion or any comments? Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. As you notice in your file, there's a letter from our city manager, Palm Bay City Manager, Suzanne Sherman, requesting this amendment. This is not only important to the city of Palm Bay, this is critically important to Brevard County. There's explosive growth in the western portion of Palm Bay. And when the Heritage Parkway was first proposed and eventually built, it was built primarily as a hurricane evacuation route. And it was built with one lane in each direction. And people complained, said, well, why was that? And the main reason was because if it wasn't done at that time, it couldn't have been done because of the cost of a wider parkway. But if you'll notice in that cost estimate, there's no cost for acquiring right-of-way, because one thing they did do when they built the two-lane Heritage Parkway was they did acquire the right-of-way to widen it at that time. So there's no cost to acquire right-of-way, which adds a tremendous amount of cost to any transportation project, as you all know. So this is requesting that this be added to the LRTP. It's important to Palm Bay. It's important to the county. Thank you.
Go ahead, Georgiana.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to make sure everyone understands, when we add a project to the long-range plan, it must be considered cost feasible. In other words, we have to have the anticipated revenue and state and federal funding to be able to add it to the plan. It does not mean that this project has funding on it. This is the big picture. This particular project is off the state highway system. We have no funding dedicated towards it, but we want to have it ready for any sort of future grant opportunities or maybe an appropriation, or we want to just line it up and get it ready for when that opportunity does present itself. I wished that we had the available funding, the anticipated revenue, but we do not at this time. But this is just a first step in lining it up and getting it queued up for the future.
Yeah, Adam.
Question, do we have an idea of where it would be on the priority list at this point?
We cannot add a project on the priority list until it is until it's considered cost feasible. Do we have it on the priority list? under grant
It
funded?
was added to the priority list under grant funded, which is an unranked section of the list.
I stand corrected.
Do I have that information?
It's in the draft, so this is new.
Please, if you don't mind.
I'm sorry?
Can you tell me what page so I can look for it?
Page 97. Thank you, Laura.
Yes. We added a grant section to the priority list because we felt like, we want to show that, yes, it is a priority. One, we don't have the anticipated revenue, but we want to just make sure that everyone, whether it be central office or our legislators, understand once we get the funding, it certainly is a priority and it is important to be identified in the long-range plan. So, yeah, thank you for that, Sarah.
Thank you. I found it. Thank you.
Okay, from the TAC, I'd look for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion,
Second.
and we have a second. Over to the CAC.
From the CAC, do we have a motion, please? A motion from Henry, second from Bill Fulmer. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
And from the TAC, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Item passes. All right, next on our agenda is presentations. We have two presentations. The first is the 2023 list of project priorities. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning. All right. Good morning, Sarah Crom, Senior Transportation Planner. We will be presenting the draft list of project priorities to be adopted in July. To kick things off, I wanted to play a video. Oh. The video is actually developed by Metroplan Orlando, and they were kind enough to let us borrow it today.
Have you ever wondered how transportation projects come to life? All projects in our 20-year plan get put on a waiting list for funding called the Prioritized Project List. It can take years, or even decades, to get out of the gate. Major transportation projects have big price tags. Funding these projects can be complicated and usually involves a combination of federal, state, and local money. We work on a project in phases. Each phase appears in our 5-year plan as it's funded, and this is great news. Once a project appears in the Transportation Improvement Program, it's making progress. Let's take a look at two types of projects: major roads, like state highway projects, and big public transportation projects, like bus rapid transit or rail. Both types begin on a similar path. First, we decide what kind of project will meet the identified need. Next, an in-depth planning study is done to look at all the available options for how the road will be built or what type of transit technology will be used. The public has opportunities to provide input, and environmental impacts are also considered. At the end of this phase, one option is chosen. After this, road projects and public transportation projects go in different directions. A road gets designed, any necessary right-of-way gets acquired, and then construction can begin. These phases often take years. For a big public transportation project needing money from
Since we're mostly talking about roadway projects, we are going to move forward. Oh. Or not. So the LOP is essentially where the plan or the list of project priorities is essentially where the planning meets the money. To summarize the video at the beginning where they discussed, it's essentially where the prioritized multimodal, it's a prioritized multimodal project list that communicates to FDOT as well as also the Space Coast TPO what projects are needed for funding. FDOT programs are based upon available revenues. Generally, when we are looking at funding projects, we are looking out into the 5th year. So a project on the list of project priorities might not necessarily get moved forward the next year, even the year after that, is we're really looking out into the future at new funding. It's essentially the implementation of our long-range transportation plan, as well as also the master plans that we've developed, such as the bicycle pedestrian master plan, ITS master plan, resiliency master plan. So when considering the list of project priorities, as well as also our project prioritization, what you really need to be doing is you need to think interregionally. Think from MIMS to MICO. What projects add value outside of just small communities, but really to the large transportation system and the community of the Space Coast? So where does the project priorities fit in our planning process? The video touched briefly on it, where essentially we develop a cost feasible plan of our long-range transportation plan, and projects are then selected by our local municipalities out of our long-range transportation plan and master plans and applied for to be put on our list of project priorities. And then once those projects have money in them, they are then put in our transportation improvement program, which Georgiana will be doing a presentation on following mine. To kind of zone in on the actual list of project priorities process, so taking that last flow chart into a more micro level, the Space Coast TPO conducts an annual call for projects. This usually happens at the beginning of every year. And essentially the municipalities have an opportunity to submit an application. We then evaluate and rank the projects, and then we go into the adoption of the list of project priorities, which is kind of our kickoff of that today, and eventually submitting it to the list of, or to FDOT along with a funding table that provides recommendations of where the money should actually be placed. FDOT reviews the applications after we submit them into a very complicated system that's a little outdated. And they essentially review them, they vet them with meetings with the locals, meetings internally, developing scopes, making sure that they're actually feasible and ready to move forward. We then work hand in hand with project programming and work program development, and then eventually they get implemented either a local agency partnership project or program project, or they will implement the project. Our list of project priorities is prioritized or ranked via 3 ways: a quantitative score of 0 to 100 based on criteria. I'll summarize in the next slide. The opportunity for qualitative score based upon a consensus recommendation of our transportation subcommittee, and then discretionary ranking, where committees and boards have the opportunity to move a project based on a consensus recommendation, with the governing board having ultimate approval. This shouldn't be used as, I really just like this project, let's move it up to number 5. It's really, these projects are making a huge impact to the Space Coast region and truly hold value that makes them where they need to be elevated. The quantitative score is developed via 5 themes, which is essentially safety. So really targeting those high crash areas or roadways that specifically are engineered at a current way that they need to be brought up to standards to make them safer. Transportation land use, so improving access to our ports, our activity centers, our economic drivers, our community resources. Sustainability and resiliency, we're looking at improving drainage, stormwater, water quality, any kind of resiliency impacts such as sea level rise, hurricanes, coastal erosion. Innovation, the project improves travel time reliability as well as also and/or includes various unique solutions such as ITS or roundabouts or RFBs or any kind of new innovative solution that is a proven countermeasure. And then finally, every project should be a multimodal project. So we're making sure that these projects are including bicycle, pedestrian, trail, transit facilities. So what's new this year? We had 5 new projects added. 2 are new intersection improvement projects. 2 are new grant-funded projects, so on that list that I mentioned earlier. And 1 is a new planning study. So the new planning study is a Norfolk Parkway extension. It was submitted by the City of Melbourne. It is to basically look at a brand new corridor, and it would be an alternative corridor evaluation. So it would draw Norfolk Parkway from the St. John's Heritage Parkway with a new alignment to the Melbourne city limits. This provides a critical connection in order to encourage development and relieve traffic on other parallel corridors. And as I mentioned, it will require an alternative corridor evaluation. Next is Wickham Road at Post Road. This was submitted by Brevard County. It's to build a southbound right turn lane and extend a southbound left turn lane in order to improve congestion and traffic flow. And they are requesting design. Minton Road intersection improvements. These are intersection improvements that were previously presented to this committee via the Minton Road feasibility study. So really this is taking the improvements that were made as a recommendation from the Space Coast TPO, Minton Road feasibility study, and moving them forward into design. This would improve traffic conditions through corridor and pedestrian crosswalks and mobility, as well as also improve the flow of traffic through that entire corridor. Next one is the Micco Road Complete Street. This was submitted by Brevard County. It is complete street improvements to enhance safety through construction of the sidewalk. Will also include the installation of mid-block crossings. Widening the road will allow for the addition of a raised median that will provide pedestrian refuge islands. And once again, this is on the discretionary grants list, and so this is an unranked item that is seeking grant funding. And this is the project that we were just discussing through the long-range transportation plan amendment. This is essentially to increase capacity in South Brevard. I think that Phil did a wonderful job explaining the project. And so this is once again going on the grant-funded list. So review of the big picture of the full draft list of project priorities. This is our strategic intermodal system list. It is basically, to summarize, there were no significant changes on the SIS list. Most of the projects are in need of construction funding. So I'll talk a little bit more about Ellis in my next slide, but essentially we're really looking at funding the Cape Canaveral Spaceport ITS project on Space Commerce Way, as well as also State Road 528, the widening, and State Road 401. I know we talk a lot about Ellis Road, but I think it's important that with it being our #1 priority, that every opportunity that we get to talk about Ellis, we mention it. So as I'm sure most of us are aware, we've been pursuing widening Ellis Road from John Rhodes to west of Wickham Road. Looking at the picture speaks 1,000 words. You have this large interchange going into this very, very tiny roadway that really is providing a horrible bottleneck right now to access to our airport, a lot of other economic generators, as well as also just the communities that live around that area. Right-of-way is fully funded for fiscal year 21 through 25. Construction is partially funded. And the Space Coast TPO is currently pursuing the development of an infra grant application on behalf of Brevard County. The regionally significant list is on 2 slides, but it should be on 1 page in your package. So this section really has a variety of projects throughout Brevard County that are addressing a variety of different needs, whether it's intersection improvements, complete streets, or widenings, and access management, safety. These projects really hit on all of those criteria elements in order to make a street or a roadway impactful to our communities. So just a couple of, just to quickly kind of run through it, we have a widening of Malabar, construction is needed. Palm Bay also has the Babcock Street widening. We have our 2 State Road A1A projects. I'll talk a little bit more in detail about those in a second, as well as also the Clear Lake Road project as well. We've been pursuing access management as well as sidewalks through Courtney for a number of years here. The access management study has been completed, so hopefully we'll be able to maybe get some numbers and actually move forward with design to make that a much safer corridor. Another Malabar Road widening project within Malabar from Babcock to US 1. The PD&E is on hold and design is needed. We have a small curb and gutter project on A1A. The widening of State Road 524, which I'll mention a little bit more in detail in a second here. US 1 intersection improvements at Vieira and Barnes, which also came out of a corridor study. Oh, did I switch? No, I apologize. I switched here. Babcock Street, also another widening. This is the O'Galley Boulevard and Wickham Road intersection improvements. I'll talk a little bit more about the South Street widening that is in need of a PD&E in a couple slides. We are hopefully had our last meeting about the State Road 519 Fisk Boulevard Roy Wall intersection and have come to a consensus on what to move forward with design in this next year. Construction is still needed. Another intersection and project at O'Galley and Sarno, Hollywood Boulevard widening project from Palm Bay Road to US 1, and then Wickham Road at Post Road, and I apologize, that Minton Road, there is a typo, that should be the full corridor, the project that I mentioned a couple slides back. So regionally significant projects to watch. So our number one regionally significant project, once again, it's a widening project on Malabar Road, submitted by Palm Bay, St. John's Heritage Parkway to Minton Road. The PD&E is wrapping up. The reason why this is so significant to watch is I have to commend the commitment by Palm Bay. This project was able to move forward will be moving forward from PD&E to design due to a significant investment and commitment by Palm Bay. This project was able to be funded for design during this last funding cycle because they put $7 million of local funds, and we were then able to match it with $3 million. So they definitely funded the majority of the design project. Now, so good news first, bad news is construction is $72 million, which is a significant project and will definitely need to be done in multiple organization partnership. As I mentioned, the A1A projects, these are also very significant in our area and have been longtime projects that both the TPO, Cape Canaveral, and FDOT has been working on. There's an intersection project as well as also more of a complete street project. The complete street is Long Point Road to George King Boulevard. So imagine coming off of 528 going down into A1A, that's where the project starts up. It'll include curb and gutter as well as also multiple safety and complete street improvements. It is currently under design. However, right-of-way and construction are unfunded at this time. The intersection project at International Drive and A1A, it will include an intersection realignment as well as also sidewalk, and it is currently under design and it was fully funded. Due to some design changes, the funding for construction has been moved out to 27. The good news is that there is the potential for intermediate complete street improvements from a resurfacing project that is going under design in fiscal year 25, construction 27. And we've had one meeting with FDOT to meet with Cape Canaveral, Port Canaveral, Cocoa Beach to really dig into what potentially could be included in that scope outside of a traditional resurfacing. And we'll continue to meet with them and advocate for as much as we possibly can get on that roadway to make it a complete street. Two other projects that are very closely related is the State Road 501, Clear Lake Road widening from Michigan Ave to Industry Road, as well as also the State Road 524 from Friday Road to projects are critical regional connections, not only to our seaport and our beaches and many of our tourist destinations, but also as we're looking at the intermodal station feasibility study that we just recommended approval of the work order. This is an essential corridor for potential access to the intermodal station. The last project that I wanted to draw your attention to on the regionally significant projects list is the State Road 405 South Street widening from State Road 50 to Rock Pit Road. PD&E is required. FDOT is going to require a corridor study as part of the PD&E process. We will be making a request this year in our funding table for FDOT to please fund and administer that corridor study in PD&E. It is a state road. We would really like to get it moving, and so we will be pushing for FDOT to make those steps this year. As well as also the city of Titusville has committed to being a willing funding partner in the PD&E. So thank you, Titusville. All right, moving forward into the rest of our lists. the Transportation System Management and Operation, or TSMO list. So this is really looking at the ITS projects that can be a lot of bang for your buck as far as moving traffic and congestion management. Many of them, design is still needed, and they were actually submitted last year. And so we'll see as we move forward with getting those pushed forward. The Traffic Management Center is our #1 project. It is fully funded, however, we're keeping it on the project priority list until ground is broken because of potential of cost increases and things like that. This is essentially the brains of the operation for Brevard County, is we need a hub to help manage all of those ITS systems at every single intersection in Brevard County. And be able to communicate with FDOT and all of the partners that are managing our ITS system. Design is wrapping up. Construction is fully funded due to a partnership of the state as well as Brevard County. And it will be the new home of the Space Coast TPO. Next section is the bicycle and pedestrian list. We had no new projects this year. As you can see, almost every single project is on a state highway. Jackson Street and Satellite Beach, they are pursuing construction funding, as well as also we had 3 new sidewalk projects on A1A that are currently under design, and they need construction as well. Some good news that we recently received is 7 and 8, 2 US 1 projects in Palm Bay, potentially will be incorporated in a resurfacing project. So another opportunity to partner and really get the most out of a project that's already going to tear up the roadway, but let's try to improve it for all users. So as I mentioned, we have these 3 sidewalk gap projects essentially. So we're really working on being able to get a cohesive sidewalk all the way through A1A, which is such a critical corridor for many bicyclists and pedestrians. Our Sun Trail Network projects, we do have 5 of them, as Georgiana mentioned. The legislature did pass increase of Sun Trail funding. That's the good news. Bad news is there's been a lot of project increases, so it remains to be seen how much of that money we'll see here in Brevard. All right, planning studies. So we have a fairly significant list of planning studies. The Space Coast TPO has several activities that we will be moving forward in-house via our Unified Planning Work Program. Those are labeled in green. So the Long Range Transportation Plan will be kicking off here. The 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan will be kicking off here anytime upon approval of our governing board on Thursday. And what's really exciting about that project is it will not just be our 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan, but we're actually doing it in partnership with Space Coast Area Transit, where we will be aligning their transit development plan to the same time frame as our Long Range Transportation Plan. So we'll really be able to see a full multimodal master plan for the Space Coast for the first time. We have just our general transportation planning support that we constantly use via our UPWP. Dixon Road and Cocoa, we will be undergoing a complete street feasibility study, kicking off probably winter next year. Intermodal station feasibility study for the $330,000 grant that we just received as previously discussed in the consent agenda. And then we are going to be developing a Southern Brevard Trails master plan for Malabar, Grant Valcaria, and Palm Bay. The scope is under development, so we'll be looking at probably a September approval of that scope. Here's just a map of all of our fully funded projects, so you can really see just how significant the development of the list of project priorities is to our community. Is without the development of the LOP, we would not have the impact of all of these red projects that you see here. So what can you expect to see under construction this year? Because that's when it really gets exciting, is when we see the projects come off of the list of project priorities and actually seeing them built in our community. So State Road 520 resurfacing from Aurora Road to Hubert Humphrey Bridge. I know resurfacings aren't traditionally what we talk about here. However, this was an opportunity for the resurfacing project to incorporate multimodal improvements from previous corridor study. And it was funded via a partnership with the Space Coast TPO, the City of Cocoa, and FDOT. So the project will begin construction in the next couple months and is anticipated completion in late 2023. It will really change the way that you see this corridor into a full, complete street, which if you're unfamiliar with the area, this is more the Cocoa Village, downtown Cocoa area, which is obviously in need of multimodal improvements. State Road 405, the NASA Bridge replacement, is currently under construction. Staff recently had an opportunity to go out and tour the construction site. And the first span is anticipated to be completed in 2023, and they'll transfer all traffic onto that and then begin building the second span to finish the full project by 2026. State Road 501 safety project. So on Clear Lake Road, FDOT will begin construction. They'll be letting construction coming up here in June to enhance the multimodal safety throughout Clear Lake. And really, once again, we're moving more into that complete street feel. And then the last project that I can guarantee you'll see under construction this year is US 192 at Hollywood Evans. This is to add additional turn lanes along both 192 and Hollywood Evans, as well as ITS improvements and upgraded pedestrian features, and construction will be let this month. So the next steps for the list of project priorities is we will be presenting this to the board on Thursday, May 11th. We then have our public open house, June 6th. And then we'll be going into approval by the BPAC, TAC, CAC, TPO Governing Board, ultimately transmitting it to FDOT in July. And I know I just gave you lots of information, so I'd be happy to take any questions or discussion regarding the LOP now. Oh my gosh, Georgiana, my brain is blanking. Infra.
It just stands for the infrastructure USDOT grant. It's one of the USDOT grants that comes out every year. This particular one, actually, they combine the infrastructure, the very large, now I'm drawing a blank, Christy. It's the very mega grant. So it's 3 grants that comes out each year. And I think they call it the multimodal USDOT grant. It includes mega, an infrastructure grant, and a rural grant. And so when you submit a project, if it qualifies for one or all of those 3 grants, you have an opportunity, even a bigger opportunity to get it funded. But there's a specific criteria for each one of the grants. The mega, I think, is for over $100 million. The infrastructure has a certain criteria, and the rural clearly is for roads that are classified as rural. So we do have a bigger opportunity under that particular program.
Do you think our chances are good of getting that?
I'm going to say yes, because I am positive, yes. We're going to go after it with everything, and we're going to need all of our partners, because once you submit the grant, the work has just really started. It's about being able to have a voice up in Washington, and that is very important. So we'll have to reach out to our legislators. We have to have everyone behind us and speaking as one voice when we submit that grant. And we're expecting it to come out any week now. They're running a little late, actually.
Thank you, Georgiana.
Yeah, Pete?
Congratulations, Sarah. My head is still spinning. Golly, girl. I'm impressed. But anyhow, this is more of a planning question. I'm out on the sidewalks where there's a lot of e-bikes, and there's a problem. They don't say on your left or on your right, bicycle behind you. And they're very quiet, and inexperienced riders are riding them, and they're really, really fast. So as we're planning for new facilities, and we know that a lot of inexperienced bicyclists are purchasing the e-bikes because they're getting cheaper and cheaper. and they really don't know what the hell they're doing, and they're going way too fast for their cognizance of other people's safety. So how are we incorporating anything into the planning when we plan, especially the combination bicycle and pads? And there is a lot of combination because we just don't have the facilities. So we have a growing problem of inexperienced people that are quiet and quick, and, you know, slower pedestrians that don't hear them coming. So are we doing anything?
I think the answer's kind of twofold here, because you have planning, which obviously is incredibly important, but really on the planning side, the best thing that we can continue to do and what we do is to advocate for the widest possible sidewalks, trails, et cetera, in order to accommodate for as many people and all users. However, as I said, I believe this question was twofold, which Shelby dipped out on me. You know, ultimately, Shelby is working very closely with many of our partners and recognizes the issues of, I don't want to say issues, recognizes the changing in our dynamics of bicycle users to shifting to more of e-bikes, and the need for education and engagement. And I'm sure that Shelby, after the meeting, would be happy to talk more about all of the things she's doing to help make our sidewalks and bike lanes e-bike and regular bicyclist friendly. So, Shelby.
Well, that isn't just a question for me. It's, you know, it's planning and an important one. And if anybody wants wider facilities, I cry and complain all the time.
Yes, you do.
So,
I appreciate your advocacy, Pete, because I know every opportunity that you get, you say that, you know, we need to have
5-foot
wider.
sidewalks just aren't wide enough for two-way traffic. I'm moving out of the way for ladies and baby carriages and people with pets all the time. Now you throw an e-bike on it coming up on my hind end, you know. I don't hear them coming. They don't say on your left or on your right, and flies by. So if I make a step out, I get hurt pretty bad because they're moving pretty fast. And that's just a reality. And so we, as a group, as a society, it's an evolving thing. And we really, really need to start thinking about everybody's safety as we proceed forward in this direction. And, you know, I'm seeing a lot of folks biking now with the e-bikes that you never saw before. And, you know, once again, good job. I was surprised you covered all of that.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate your comments, Pete.
Guy, you had something?
Yeah, I have a question about unanticipated pressure. I mean, we've seen some of that from Chairman Weinberg talking about the areas in Palm Bay where explosive construction is occurring. Another area I see is the State Road A1A area up there around 3A and 3B. In that particular area, I know that next year there's an anticipated breaking of ground for a new aquarium, which we're hoping will create a lot of traffic. I'm not certain that that was anticipated when this A1A stuff was there, because even Brevard Zoo didn't even know it was coming at that point. So how are you dealing with that from year to year with regard to these projects? I'm baffled.
It's, you know, obviously we don't have a crystal ball. If anyone has one that I can borrow, you know, please see me after the meeting. So it's really up to the partnership with our locals in order for us to have an open string of communication, because as the TPO, we don't constantly, our job isn't to be constantly reviewing all of the potential new developments. It's really, we're depending on our partners to work with us and let us know when they're submitting projects or when we're doing the updates to list of project priorities. That is something that we would like to see change in our 2050 long-range transportation plan, is to develop a better relationship with our locals where we're able to be kind of more in the know and with our fingers on the pulse for land development changes and such, so that we could potentially steer or change. As far as the actual project prioritization is, the discretionary ranking is really the potential for the TAC, CAC, or the governing board to come in and say, we had X, Y, and Z land changes and development. This project needs to get fast-tracked. What can we do?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair.
Arlen? Oh, excuse me, Georgiana?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted Guy to touch on what you just mentioned. Unfortunately, transportation cannot ever keep up with the pace of development. I will say that we just recently met with DOT to go over a list of candidate resurfacing projects that would be happening in the short term before the complete street project on A1A. And I know Bob was there as well. We definitely brought it to their attention, some improvements that could happen. I know the aquarium was talked about and what that could produce as far as traffic is concerned. So every opportunity that we get, we do try to talk with the department and make sure they're aware of the impacts of the development. And as you're getting on, you're coming off of George King and you're getting on A1A, that's a very short on-ramp there. And in fact, just over the weekend, you're kind of looking back and you just got to shoot out there. So we brought that to their attention as well, because that could potentially be a serious problem. But getting it lined up, getting it in the pipeline, when is it best to get that improvement moving is always, and Lexi, of course, was there, and as well as Councilmember
Jared.
Willis.
And Jared from Cocoa
And
Beach.
Jared, yes. All of our partners along A1A in the North Beaches there.
Yeah, Guy, I just want to bring something up too, that you kind of addressed, well, how does, are we aware of upcoming changes and new challenges and stuff like that? Is some of that we can bring up here, okay? And that can be then addressed by the TPO Executive Board, and we can really start that discussion here.
And
I
we
think that's an
appreciate
important
when
part
you
of
do
what we
that.
do.
Thank you, Chairman.
Arlen, you had something?
Yes, most of you recall back in September, I brought up about the e-bikes on the bicycles, or on the sidewalks, I mean. Almost ran over a young baby down by Laurie Wilson Park. I would just like to know, has any city in the county here come up with a proposal or set any plan in action that will curtail the use of electric vehicles on sidewalks?
Are you aware of, Shelby? Are you aware of
No.
any plan? Oh.
Okay, I was just
Jared
curious.
Jared is piping up, but Shelby's not aware of any specific plans.
So the city of Cocoa Beach currently has a motorized vehicle task force that's looking at micromobility and the e-bikes and that sort of thing. So we don't have any final results yet or any report or anything to share, but I know that's in the works in Cocoa Beach.
I think that sooner rather than later, the TPO is at some point going to have to do some sort of micromobility study or something, but that'll be more of a system-wide approach versus each individual municipality might not, they have individuals that are there's individual characteristics within each each community versus the TPO potentially could do a micromobility study that looks at a more of a holistic system-wide approach. And maybe that is something that we could do in the coming years. At this point, our UPWP is full, so I can't make any promises immediately, but if micromobility continues to be a subject, then clearly we need to respond to it.
Bob, you had something?
Thank you. I just wanted to, from what Pete said, good job on putting this together and all the details, but to kind of go off of what Guy and Georgiana said with all the projects that are going on over in Cape Canaveral, 528, there's a missing link, and I brought this up a couple times, and the missing link is all those projects, as far as I'm aware of, are ending right at the City of Cape Canaveral a boundary line. So that area between there and 401, which is also interconnected with the 528 project, is not on any study. I know we talked about it at the recent resurfacing kickoff. So I don't know if that needs to be added in as a planning study or something, because that's great point about the aquarium coming. That's going to become a very, very congested area. It already is a very congested area, but it's going to get worse and worse. Also, on Arlen's question about micromobility, I believe we had a meeting with this city. Cape Canaveral is working on a similar project, I believe, right, Veronica, on micromobility. And last comment I wanted to make is the signs are up at 520 in Cocoa Village. I think construction starting, I think it said yesterday, 5/7, I think it said, May 7th. What's that?
Tonight they actually
Night?
See,
glad
project to
see that
watch.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Yeah, Pete?
Well, to expand a little on my observations, where there's a bike trail, you know, a 6-foot wide bike trail, that problem that I'm talking about doesn't exist. It's when you put pedestrians and bicycles, and we see a lot of it in our planning where you have what they call multi-use, or just sidewalk where there just are no bicycle facilities. And what I'm saying first is a lack of training on how to use equipment that's potentially dangerous. So if I was to suggest anything, I would, before you could even buy one, you have to have some type of driver's ed, how to properly conduct yourself on that vehicle, especially if you're going to be using sidewalks. That's probably not the most effective. The most effective is a bicycle lane, but we're not going to have that. The cash just isn't there. So we're going to have mixed use, and it can't be on the city level. It has to be on the state level, where everybody that buys an e-bike has to have some type of training, and that's just a suggestion. And what I see, if you have them on a bike lane, not a big problem. If they're on a multi-use, it's doable, but somewhat of a problem. If they're on a 6-foot sidewalk, man, it's like that ramp. Shut your eyes and have at it and hope you survive.
Pete, would you mind passing that microphone right behind you there? Thank you.
Sarah, I just wanted to ask for the State Road 405 South Street. Once the City of Titusville's level of participation is established, would we see an adjustment to the priority ranking?
So at the currently the way that the criteria that we use to develop the list of project priorities, you would not. However, from the discussion with our transportation subcommittee this past several weeks ago, they made the recommendation that rather than having that opportunity for the 0 to 15 qualitative score built in where it could be a discussion, but rather it be built within the criteria where it's very specifically lined out and there's no guesswork to it. And part of what will be proposed to the transportation subcommittee and ultimately to this group come this fall when we are looking at how we can take the recommendations from the transportation subcommittee into our ranking process, there most likely will be there will be a way for us to add points to a project based on the level of participation from a municipality. So this year, no, but I anticipate this time next year, yes. Good question.
Any other questions for
there's-
Sarah?
Yeah, Adam?
I don't have a question. I wanted to just share something from my personal perspective. This is my 3rd year serving on this board, and initially I came in as an alternate. I'm retired military, 20 years, transportation background, logistics background. And one of the things that I wanted to share with all of you, some of you are probably sitting here and it's a big fog, especially after Sarah's presentation a little while ago. I had a hard time following it. But one of the things that I've learned is that this body has some effect.
Absolutely.
Recently, just last year, 3 years ago, when I came on board, safety was not even near the top. And I don't know if you noticed it, but safety is number 1 or number 2, has been that way since last year. So we do have some effect. Our elected officials are there, and they have more authority than we do, but we can certainly tickle their tickle them in some sort of way, and I do that quite a bit. My mother taught me to do that when I was a kid growing up. So I just wanted to share with you that we're not here wasting our time. I've never felt that way, and I just hope that you feel the same way. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Any other comments or discussion?
Yeah, Cliff, I just want to respond to Corbina's comment. The project priority list, besides all the ranking and all that takes place, the project priority list can be changed. And we can in part begin that discussion, and then of course the TPO Executive Board has the ability to move projects on their project priority list. We have done that just recently, as a matter of fact.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Georgiana.
One last comment I wanted to mention. The good news about South Street is, DOT funding is categorical, meaning, they have a pot of money for PD&E studies, they have a pot of money for design, a pot of money for right-of-way and construction. South Street is the only project on our entire priority list that needs a PD&E. All the rest of the projects have moved forward. So I think moving it, requesting that the department do a corridor study, which is the first step that really informs the PD&E, and then getting the PD&E funded, whether it's number 20 or number 1, I think it has a really good shot of moving forward. There's no question that traffic is spiking on that corridor. And yes, there's a big resurfacing coming through, and the department is going to do some safety upgrades, but getting that PD&E started is going to be really important, and then figuring out how to include the additional phases in the long-range plan, which right now they're not there, meaning they're not cost feasible. And so I think we have a really good shot. It's important, to Phil's point, yes, we can move around priorities, and you all have the ability to make those recommendations, but it's also important that we have a very stable priority list and that we move forward priorities so that the department understands, look, Ellis is number 1. You have some flexibility, but there also needs to be some stability with our priorities. So I just put that out there for you to consider. Moving priorities up and down depending on what phase is needed is not a smart thing to do all the time. So, and then I also wanted to mention back to the e-bikes, Shelby attends statewide meetings. And to your point, I think, Pete, Shelby can share that information as far as, training and laws for when you purchase an e-bike. That's something that I'm sure, I don't know if that's been talked about on a statewide level. It has. So I think that she can definitely keep her ear close to what's going on from a state perspective and share our concerns. And Bob, not to put you on the spot, did you mention to me that there was one of the ports, the Swans, was hit and killed by an e-bike at Jetty Park, which is, it's not a person or a baby, but that's just, tragic. They're not small birds, yes, because we went out to the beach, my husband and I, and my husband said, where's the swans? And I'm like, and I was reminded by you mentioning that. So really sad. There's got to be some education across the board.
Go ahead.
Christy?
My question or comment is that, Hollywood Boulevard had been ranked higher and it dropped this year. And so we're very disappointed. I'm hoping next year, maybe it can move up the ranking. I know some of Brevard County's here, and they keep sort of chipping away at the design of it. But that thing has, ever since the mall opened in the 80s, it really does need to be 4-laned. So that's my comment.
And I would also just add to Christy's point, Hollywood Boulevard is further down the priority list, but even if it was number 1, we can't fund it until the design is completed, and we're waiting on that to happen from the county's consultant. So
Also, isn't it not permitted to have federal funding?
no, I think that it can. I think
Okay. I thought they only wanted SHRP or SIGP for it.
that's possible if they don't want to federalize the construction phase, but right now, I think there's right-of-way that's needed, so it'll be up to, maybe they don't want to federalize the right-of-way phase, but perhaps the construction phase in the future could be federalized, so.
Thank you.
All right,
Okay. Sarah, thank you. Good job.
thank you.
Next up is a presentation, the draft fiscal year 2023, 2024 through fiscal year 2027, 2028, the Transportation Improvement Program.
All right, this is going to be a quick 3-slide presentation. Great job, Sarah, because I think spending time to talk about our priorities that's one of the most important things we do here. You as our committees do, and so it's why we're here. It's about transportation and looking at it from all of our modes. So I appreciate the conversation on that and really kind of digging into it. Let me back up a second. So at your place, you have the first draft of our Transportation Improvement Program. I have not emailed this out. This is hot off the press. And when I say first draft, it is definitely in draft form. It does not have the executive summary. It's just projects. And it lists all of the projects in the DOT's work program for fiscal year 24 through 28. And, just to kind of remind you, our mission to plan a transportation system that enhances quality of life and improves economic development. Well, the projects in this document really makes that happen. And so just to kind of go over the timeline real quick, it starts with our list of priority projects that Sarah just presented. And it starts really last year's priority projects that was adopted in July. We turn that list over to the DOT after adoption, and then they evaluate the funding. And they try to match up the funding with available state and federal funding with our projects. And that happens typically in the summer and the fall. And, new funding on our projects gets incorporated into the DOT tentative work program. And in December of every year, DOT presents those new projects, and then they get incorporated into the work program December, January. Then the DOT provides us with a download of the tentative work program, and we use that to develop this document. It's really a snapshot of the DOT's tentative work program. So in July, this is going to come back to you for formal adoption. And after formal adoption, we will be operating under this new TIP, or Transportation Improvement Program. But prior to the adoption, we really go through a very extensive public involvement process. And that's very critical to the process. We will have an open house, which Abby will mention to you a little later. And that's where we really present a lot of the projects. We present some of our priority projects, any new funding that we received. And again, it's our citizens have a stake in it. It's so important to that process. And one thing, in the 5 years between 2024 and 2028, there's state, federal, and local funding in here, and that totals $1.3 billion. So that's $1.3 billion in transportation projects that are coming into Brevard County. And that covers some of our priorities. We have highway and bridge capacity, but we also have a lot of maintenance projects, lots of resurfacing projects. Preservation of the system is very important. We have safety, we have technology and ITS projects. We also have a section for safe routes to school, complete streets, which includes our A1A projects, sidewalks, trails. We have an aviation section, a seaport section, a spaceport section, rail, and then we have transportation planning, which is at the very end of the TIP, which includes, the funding that the TPO gets to do our work, our projects in our work plan that Sarah had mentioned, our, feasibility, the passenger rail feasibility study, trail planning projects, long-range plan, transit development plan. All that funding is in the transportation planning section. So for you all, we're just asking that you review these projects. Let us know if you have any questions. And over the next month or so, we will be putting together a complete transportation improvement program with our executive summary. We'll be including the updated maps that Sarah had presented, which will be part of this document. We will be including language related to performance measures. We have to, projects that are included in here, in the TIP, must adhere to performance measures for safety, bridge pavement and various transit performance measures as well. So again, this is just the first draft. We'll be turning this over to the DOT and have them review our projects, making sure they're consistent with the DOT work program. Again, this isn't a wish list. These are projects that are funded in the DOT's work program. So that is it for me, Mr. Chair. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Georgiana. Questions, comments for Georgiana?
Yeah, Adam?
Yeah, I noticed that there's no meeting next month, so we got a couple of months to work on it.
Correct.
Number two, I noticed on the federal level that funding jumped significantly from 24 to 25. Is that because we're now going to get credit for the additional people here that were counted during the census several years ago that we didn't get credit for last year?
No, that does not mean that, unfortunately.
Well, can you shed some light on how come such a significant jump? Because in 27, it goes from 173 something to 20. Wow. I mean, we're all over the board here.
You have, well, my first thought would be that it would be the NASA Causeway, but that's not true. The funding would not show up in 25 because it's under construction. Space Commerce Way, it could be the Space Commerce Way project, potentially. That's a very good question. It is a project most likely in the highway and bridge section, because that's where the big money is. And this is in fiscal year 25. Let me see here real quick.
You can see why I've asked you, because you can find it a lot quicker than I can.
That's a very good question.
Okay, well, we'll save it for the next time.
It could also be related to space or port, because it's not there's no big funding showing up in highway and bridge capacity. So I will look that up and I'll let you know.
The only reason I bring it up is because it's an interesting sidebar that some people might not notice. I handled funding when I was in the military, not a lot of it, but it was fascinating to watch the numbers go up and down, and sometimes there was no rhyme or reason. It was just somebody at higher level doing their thing, you know?
We have some very good years and we have some lean years, and I guess fiscal year 25 is a good year for some of our priorities. So
Let's hope it stays that way.
Yes.
Yeah, Pete?
On the summary of screening, I noticed that safety is number one. And the reason I'm talking to you about it is the criteria would emphasize there's more money available for urban cores where you have higher accident and fatality rates than you would in suburbia, where you're trying to establish a safety corridor for everybody, but the accidents aren't happening yet. Am I reading this correctly?
I'm not sure I quite follow your question.
Well, it says high crash and, high crash areas, that's urban core. Like Orange Blossom Trail, where they were having a lot of, that's an urban core area.
Yes.
If you go out where I live, Titusville, you don't have that type of density, so your numbers are low.
Yeah, yes, he is. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is US 1, which is one of our highest crash corridors, and I would not necessarily say that's urban core.
Well, when you segment it down,
Okay.
it would be an urban core.
Gotcha. Yes, yes.
And so that segment would get funded for an improvement a lot quicker than the auxiliary areas.
Potentially,
It's a question, not debating, I'm just,
Yes.
money is limited.
Money is limited, absolutely, absolutely. And the DOT is looking at high crash locations. We're looking at high crash locations. Did you want to add something, Sarah?
Well, I guess one would be an example of there's a resurfacing that's under design in Mims and Scottsmore, which is clearly a rural area, and it is on the Vision Zero high entry network. So if you were to use that as kind of a case study, it doesn't always, in Brevard County, it is not necessarily the urban core that we're seeing those safety issues. However, what you're referring to with the screening criteria, it breaks down to 100 points. It is not weighted, so it is 20 points towards safety, 20 points towards land use and transportation, 20 points towards resiliency, innovation, and multi-mobility. So it is, the way our screening criteria is set up, it breaks it down on such a minute level that we feel that it does blanket look at all projects on an even scale. Because ultimately, like, it's only 7 points if you're on the Vision Zero high entry network. 7 points out of 100 is really not going to move you that much. It's when you're looking at, we're trying to look at the projects holistically, where a project is meeting all of those markers and thus is the best project for our community. I hope that helps.
Well, I get it. You don't get shut out, but you know, every point helps.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay.
Anything else for Georgiana?
Okay, no action, but just wanted to let you guys lay your eyes on it and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgiana. Next on the agenda is the section where we have reports, and our first report is from the FDOT. Good morning.
Good morning, Yesenia Encarnacion, FDOT. Before I begin, I just have a few announcements this morning. We're expecting from central office official notification to MPOs as far as the census data for May 15th. Once that is available, there will be 180 days for the MPOs to submit a proposed apportionment plan. Also, there are a few webinars coming up, one from today and also this Thursday for the Protect discretionary grants from FHWA. Those are today from 1 to 2. There are virtual webinars and also at the same time on Thursday. On Thursday. There's another upcoming webinar on May 22nd for the 2050 Revenue Forecast webinar. Those will be available for the MPOs, TPOs, and all the liaisons. In your packet, on page 107 is our construction report. You will see a list of FDOT's upcoming and future, and current projects. Please keep in mind these can also be found on cflroads.com. I have no updates to share today. However, I can take any questions and or comments you have for me.
Yeah, I have a question. In the city of Palm Bay, the I-95 Malabar, where is that?
I don't have much of an update for you today. However, working with Celine Bounds, and she's in our scoping team, I will follow up with her later today and see what updates she may have, and I will definitely get that to you.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah. Adam Kohler, District 1. Just quick, did you say that we would have some information in regards to the census on the 15th of May?
That is correct.
Did I catch that right?
Yes. Yes.
Can you go into that a little bit in more detail?
Unfortunately, I'm very new, so I'm still learning. However, it is supposed to become available that day from our central office. So at this moment, I don't have any, I can't give you any information.
Well, you can understand why I'm excited. Remember, we had this discussion last year. Why aren't we getting credit for the additional people that have moved into our area, our state? And so we're patiently waiting. Here it is 23. At the rate we're going, it could be 25 before we feel this financial impact. Am I missing something here?
We will, Mr. Chair, we've been having conversations on the statewide level through the MPOAC and the district level, and so we will have more information coming to you. And we are definitely, we're having conversations with the MPOAC concerning our PL funding and how, because of the new census, additional funding related to the PL funds. And so more to come later this year.
Just didn't want the discussion to die. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Anything
Any other
else? Yes, Christy?
May 22nd. Let me follow up. Let me find out about that. I'll let you know.
And I'm not sure if it's on the website, Yesenia, the revenue forecasts is very important as we start to develop our long-range plans. Because the department gives us available revenue, and that's how we build our long-range plan. You can't include a project in long-range plan if you don't have the money that you can feasibly, over the next 25 years, afford it. And so very important to the process that's tied to the SysCost feasible plan, which is, part of our concern as to why Brevard didn't have, more projects in the SysCost feasible plan. So it's all interconnected and tied together, and extremely important as we strategically build our plan for our vision over the next 25 years. And of course, the long-range plan is only updated every 5 years, so we get another opportunity every 5 years. Still, very important conversations, and the department has us at the table as we are understanding the different pots of money and how it's going to be presented to us and what we, Brevard, is going to get as we build that plan.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Anything else?
Yeah, Yesenia, I just want to add something. I'm glad you brought that up, Frank, the I-95 exit at Malabar Road from southbound. I know DOT is doing a study of I-95, but that particular exit ramp is absolutely critical. It's something that needs to be done as soon as possible. There was another death at that exit ramp last month, I believe, and every afternoon traffic is backed up from the exit ramp onto I-95. That's causing these accidents. It's causing these problems. So, rather than wait for the complete study of I-95 and have a decision made on that, that really, really needs to be addressed sooner.
Absolutely.
Craig.
Yeah, Yesenia. I wanted to, first of all, pass some appreciation along to a question that I had asked at the last meeting. Here we are sitting in May 8th, and I find it amazing that we're talking about plans out at 2050, but we are now 3 weeks away from the start of hurricane season. My question went to one of the lessons learned that FDOT had done about changing the direction of lanes of traffic for evacuation. And they had talked about, well, it took so much manpower, and there was a whole list of items of issue with that. And they had come up with an alternate plan, which was to provide opening the shoulder in the westbound direction to get that extra shoulder, yet leaving the eastbound lanes open for emergency vehicles and such. So I wanted to delve a little deeper into that, and Saucy Fine, a planning specialist, got back to us, at least for my area of interest, the Cocoa area, and what they had decided on was just where State Route 520 meets 528, from that intersection to just east of where it meets 417, they would open that third lane of traffic. So in looking at that, it seemed to make sense to me. You have 520, you got 528, right over there, you got the 407 all coming in. Then you get 3 lanes of traffic basically to 417, where you then split off. You can go south, east, or north. Of course, I think we've all learned that we should only evacuate when told. We all do our hurricane preparations because you're not going to get everybody in Brevard County out of the county unless you want to sit through a hurricane in your car. So obviously, the beaches, probably even sections of Merritt Island, or parts of the mainland that are in the high-velocity impact zone would want to get out of Dodge. So I did want to pass on my appreciation for that additional information, and any other people who are interested in their areas. I'm sure there's similar plans for 192 and State Route 50. And of course, I think now everybody knows to avoid State Route 46. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, anything else?
I just wanted to welcome Yesenia, our new DOT liaison for Brevard County, and we're very excited to have her. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Okay, next is the Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Trails Advisory Committee.
Hey, Sarah Crom, Senior Transportation Planner. So the Bicycle Pedestrian Trails Advisory Committee last met on Monday, March 27th. The meeting was essentially to actually hold their Bicycle Pedestrian Trails Advisory Committee strategic assessment, as I've been updating you guys throughout that process. As we are, just as a reminder, we are currently analyzing the BPAC for kind of their mission, purpose, policies, membership, essentially trying to shape them where they can best serve our governing board. So we provided the initial results from that workshop and the survey results to our executive committee. Thank you for all who participated in the survey. For a reminder, the survey results are within your agenda package, as well as also the minutes from the BPAC strategic assessment. We were supposed to hold our BPAC walking workshop April 24th. Regretfully, it was canceled due to weather and has been rescheduled May 22nd. Our next BPAC meeting will be held Monday, June 26th at the Vieira Government Center in our normal room, the Florida room. And we will be reviewing the recommendations or opportunities that have been presented from our consultant in moving the BPAC forward in that strategic assessment. So that's all I have today.
Questions for Sarah?
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Space Coast Area Transit. Okay, thank you. Public engagement report. Morning, Abby.
Good morning. My name is Abby Hemingway, and I'm the Public Information and Outreach Manager for the Space Coast CPO. And before we chat about a few things upcoming for the months of May and June, wanted to recap some of our recent wins in the community and also for our staff. So for the months of April, for February and April, we supported the 2023 Running Zone Spring into Fitness Challenge, formerly the Mayor's Fitness Challenge, by promoting and participating in local health and wellness events. Our team even logged 11,852 minutes, and that was led by our Education Outreach Coordinator, Shelby Villatoro. And on April 15th, at their local awards ceremony in Cocoa Village, we chatted with locals about the importance of traffic safety, passed out bike lights, reflective goodies, and resources. And then right next to that graphic there, we also participated in Earth Day at the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex. We share pedestrian and bicycle traffic safety resources and goodies with visitors and students. We met a lot of people, of course, out of the Florida area, but that was unique to talk to them about their own communities. And we really love being a part of the Space Coast community where we can work with our partners. We saw multiple community partners out at that event, so just a great opportunity for us. And then just to talk about some staff wins, during National Work Zone Safety Awareness Week, the TPO partnered with the Federal Highway Administration to bring attention to motorists and worker safety in work zones. It's a little known fact that many of our workers in construction zones, they can be hit, they can be seriously injured in those areas. So we try to recognize and support them during this safety week that's recognized across the nation. And so we supported on Go Orange Day, we all wear orange in their support. I also wanted to give a shout out and congratulations to Shelby, who flew all the way to Seattle earlier in April to participate in a League of American Bicyclists LCI seminar hosted by the Cascade Bicycle Club. During this seminar, she honed her cycling skills, earned her LCI certification, which will now enable her to train local bicycle safety advocates and community partners, and we're really proud of her achievement. So May is Bike Month, and we are joining the League of American Bicyclists by celebrating bike joy. So being physical, the mental well-being by biking, how it brings us joy, and partnering with some local partners to make sure that we spread the great message of how bicycling can really benefit our lives and different ways that you can be active. So just last week, we celebrated with Bike and Roll to School Day at both Westside Elementary in Palm Bay and Surfside Elementary in Satellite Beach. And during those events, our staff had a pledge board that kids could come sign saying that they'd be safe when they walked, biked, or skated. And then they also were able to pick out safety goodies from our treasure box that had reflectives in there, keychains. And then at Surfside, Shelby was even able to fit some and distribute some helmets that for kids in need. So that was really a great event. Some other schools are participating later this month, so we'll be pushing out those photos. So make sure you stay tuned to our channels. We'll be pushing out a lot of bike safety materials for Bike Month and also just promoting some upcoming activities. Speaking of, we have some outreach activities coming up. Just later this week, Georgiana will be presenting to the Cocoa Beach Regional Chamber of Commerce, to their Government Affairs Committee to share more about who we are, what we do. We're very excited about that opportunity. And then this Saturday, our public involvement team will be going out to the Melbourne Square Mall to support the Hometown Heroes event. This event honors local first responders and emergency personnel and others in the community, and we're inviting our friends from FDOT District 5 and Health First to come and help us fit and distribute helmets and pass out safety goodies. Shelby will also be hosting an outreach table at an event for the Riverside District Boy Scouts in a few weeks. And this isn't up on the screen, but I did want to just share this. Shelby will also be leading a helmet fitting certification class on May 24th. If you have any volunteers, staff members who are interested in getting certified to fit helmets and order them and distribute them thereafter after they're certified, this is a great opportunity. We will be hosting hopefully multiple ones throughout the year, the course of the next year, and getting all of our partners to become advocates. And lastly, just some upcoming things for the month of May. We have Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month, Youth Traffic Safety Month, and Older Americans Month. We'll be posting some specific graphics related to these topics. Most importantly, motorcycle safety. We are seeing a high trend in fatalities when it comes to our motorcycle vulnerable road users. So any help that you can get in sharing that information out, we appreciate it. And last but not least, Sarah and Georgiana both touched on this, but this is your formal save the date, and then you'll get an invite later this week. But every year about this time in the summer, we, in accordance with developing our transportation improvement program and also our project priorities, we hold an annual open house where the public and our stakeholders are invited to come and share their thoughts about our transportation projects for the next 5 years. And not just only that, but they hear about some trending topics in transportation, and we try to liven it up a bit. But it's really about to get them engaged in the process, and so they learn who we are, what we do, why we matter, and how they can get involved. So we'll be sending out that event registration later this week. Our theme this year is Transportation Connections from Point A to Point B. So please make sure you share that out on your channels if you can. And as always, make sure you follow us.
Thank you, Abby.
Probably an email. So we try to push the registration because people can come in person, but they can also watch online if they can't make it. It's going to be here on June 6th at the Center for Collaboration. We'll have our amazing team from Ant Farm here as well. They'll be broadcasting it, but it'll be out sent to our committees and board via email.
Okay. Anything else for Abby? All right. Appreciate it, Abby.
Thank you.
Next is the local government report or reports. Does anyone have any reports that they would like to share? Yes, go ahead, Erica.
I'm Erica Ely from Satellite Beach. First, I'd like to thank TPO staff for showing up to our Bike to School event. It was a great event. I was there too. We'd just like to put out that thank you to staff for making it their way down there. And the second thing is Satellite Beach is interested in applying for the Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Discretionary Grant Program. There is a minimum of $500,000 for an application, and it's actually for public-facing EV charging stations So we would like to just put it out there if anybody would like to partner with us to apply to that. The deadline is at the end of the month, so it's coming up pretty quick. As we were putting together our project list, we are not sure if we're going to be able to meet that $500,000 minimum. So we'd just like to put out there if anybody else might have some projects that they'd like to partner with us, we can combine it to make that $500,000. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Erica.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
on that point, Erica, that's great news. I believe Brevard County is also applying for that same grant, and they have a list of projects at all of the county parks that they want to incorporate infrastructure, charging stations at. So might be an opportunity there. I don't know, but that's great news.
Thank you.
Bob?
I wanted to do a shout out to you, Cliff, for putting together a great corporate run back on April 13th down at the airport, and for hosting that. Somehow the weather cooperated, and it was still a great event. And also this past weekend, the Morella Cruises, which is part of TUI, did their first cruise out of the port on Sunday. I believe it was.
Yesterday.
And the airport had 5 shiny new 787s down there, bringing and taking the folks back to Great Britain. And it's just a great partnership that the airport and the port have. And this is something that's going to be continuing throughout the summer with visitors coming in and then spending time here in the area, and then going on some really interesting cruises. They're doing like East Coast smaller ships. They're doing East Coast different itineraries, like I believe Savannah and things like that.
Charleston, Baltimore.
Charleston, and they're also doing a Gulf one. So appreciate all those folks coming in and impacting our area economically. So good job.
Yeah, no, thanks, Bob. Yeah, there was yesterday about 3,100 passengers coming and going with that operation with the 5 787s and the cruise ship. And it's a really good example of intermodal, right? Air, sea, and land. So yeah, we're all really excited about it. Thanks for saying that, Bob.
Yeah, Adam.
I don't know where this goes, so I'll just ask. There's been a lot of activity down at the Melbourne Airport in the last few months. Do you have an update to share with us this time,
Well,
or 2 months from now?
that's one of them. We've been fortunate to land some new domestic air service as well. Sun Country Airlines been flying to Minneapolis seasonally. Also, we have Avelo. They're flying to 3 cities in the Northeast. They're flying to, one city in North Carolina as well. But, coming out of the pandemic, we did a lot of construction, $72 million worth of upgrades to the terminal and an addition. And I think we're seeing the results of that now. And really, our county, our region becoming more of a destination is a big part of that too. And I just, Bob said it, the relationship that we have with the port. Yesterday there was over 50 motor coaches associated with that operation. It's 55 passengers per bus. So, yeah, good things are happening.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight it because it's stuff that could very easily be missed. My wife and I should say, I would prefer to fly out of Sanford because I don't particularly care to go to that busy Orlando airport where I used to work for the government. And I noticed that there are some alternatives that are popping up down at the Melbourne airport. And one of these days, I'm hoping that I can take a flight out of there.
I hope you can too.
I wanted to bring that to everybody's attention here. Share the news.
Thank you, Adam. Go ahead, Georgina.
Mr. Chair, lastly, I just want to, we've been sharing information related to Avelo.
Yes.
And so Abby's been sharing all that information on our Facebook page. So if you all have liked our page, feel free to share that information. It helps the community, it helps businesses, and we want to be a partner in that. And also, I see Anna, Ms. Taylor is back here, and I was going to mention that, you know, Anna used to be in charge of the DOT liaisons, and we were very sad to see her go, but she's now a Port Canaveral employee.
Awesome. Yeah.
So needless to say, we're very excited to have her in the county. And so I'm sure that the Port folks are very happy to have her on board, and I think with her DOT expertise, it will be to our benefit and to the Port's benefit. So welcome, Anna. It's good to see
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, welcome, Anna. Congratulations. You know, the other thing that I would say about Air Service and Avello is thank you so much for getting the word out, because the Air Service is very competitive. And if we don't use the service, if our you know, folks in our region don't buy tickets, they, you know, that service will leave. So that's why it's so critical that we do get the word out, and you know, things are changing. There certainly are alternatives. And to your point, Adam, you know, we're your hometown airport, and you know, there's not a whole lot of things that we might have over some of the bigger airports like Orlando, but one of the things that we have is convenience, you know, and low stress, and that's something that we really are proud of, and it's you know, it's part of our existence, and we want that to continue going forward. So thank you.
Yeah, that's the point I was making. It's a less stressful thing.
Thank you, Adam. Yes, Bob.
Georgiana, thanks for, I didn't realize Anna was in the room, but thank you for recognizing her.
Sorry.
Our
I just looked and saw her.
Our communications department has 2 new employees. Anna is our manager of government relations, and we have another gentleman, Tom Self, who was previously with Marco Rubio's office, joined us as manager of stakeholder affairs. So they're you know, great to have them on board, and
great team.
Our communications team is back to full strength now. So.
Okay, anything else? All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.